Hello and welcome to this demo. In this demo, we're going to see how to set up a lab environment to play around with Ansible. In this demo, we will be setting up an entire lab environment on our laptop from scratch. For this, we will use a virtualization tool called Oracle VirtualBox, since it works with all flavors of operating systems like Windows, Linux, and OS X. So this is what we plan to do. We will first install Oracle VirtualBox on our laptop, and then we'll create a template system based on the CentOS operating system. Once we create the template, we will then be able to easily create multiple virtual machines as required from that template. For the purpose of this lab, we will first create an Ansible control machine from the template, and then we will move on to create two other machines which will act as the target machine for Ansible to perform configuration changes on. Okay, so in my case, I have a Windows system, so I will be setting up a lab environment on my Windows system. It doesn't really matter what operating system you're on. You could follow the same instructions to set up a lab environment on Linux or your Mac operating systems. So in our case, we're going to install VirtualBox. So go to virtualbox.org. And in the website, you will find a link to download the VirtualBox software. In the download page, you will find links to download VirtualBox for specific operating systems. In my case, mine is Windows. I'm going to click on Windows, and I'm going to download the software. Once downloaded, run the executable and follow the instructions in the installation wizard to complete installation. In my case, I've already installed it, so I'm just going to cancel that. After you install, open up the Oracle VM VirtualBox interface, and it will look something like this. Now the next step is to deploy virtual machines. In order to do that, you can either create a machine, attach a CD drive of an operating system, and follow the instructions to install the operating system as we are familiar with. However, there's also another easy way. There are pre-installed, pre-configured operating system images available on the internet. We could use those to easily deploy as many virtual machines as we need. For this, if you go to the website osboxes.org, you will find a lot of pre-installed, pre-configured images of various operating systems. Go to this site and select the VM images, VirtualBox images link at the top. Then you will find a list of various different operating systems. From this, we will select CentOS. And then it will take us to the CentOS page. Here you can see information on downloading the CentOS image. In our case, we're downloading the VirtualBox image for CentOS 7, and we're downloading the 64-bit version. So remember to download that particular version. We will then, it is downloaded as a .7z file, which is a compressed file. So you need a software to uncompress it, like a tar or WinZip. In my case, I'm using the 7-zip software to extract the contents of the file into a folder. Wait for it to finish the extraction process. Once finished, if you go into the folder, you will see that there's a folder called 64-bit. And inside that folder, you'll find a file with the extension .vdi. That stands for virtual disk. And that is what we will use to create our virtual machine. We're now ready to create a new virtual machine. So we go back into the Oracle VM VirtualBox interface, click on New, and we fill in the name and operating system. Now I will name the virtual machine that I'm creating as CentOS-template, because as we discussed, our goal is to create a template and then use that template to create as many virtual machines as I need. So I'm going to name it as CentOS-template. I will now select the type as Linux, and the version, since it does not have CentOS listed, I could simply select Other. Now, as you can see under the versions, there are 32-bit as well as 64-bit options. In our case, we downloaded the CentOS 64-bit version, so we must select a 64-bit option. Now, in case you do not see the 64-bit options in this list, that is most probably because you do not have the virtualization technology enabled on your laptop. To enable virtualization technology on your laptop, it is usually under the BIOS settings. So if you simply Google enable virtualization in BIOS followed by your laptop model, you will see a set of results. It usually looks something like this. Under the BIOS, under the advanced BIOS features, you'll have something called as virtualization technology. And you must ensure that it is set to enable state. So once you do that, restart your laptop and you will find the 64-bit option. Select the other Linux 64-bit option for this and click next. In the next, here we select a memory size. By default, it's set to 512 MB, and let's change that to around 2 GB. So we'll set it to 2 gigs. In the next step, we select the hard disk that we downloaded. So in this case, the default selection is create a virtual hard disk now, but that is not what we want. We already have a pre-built image of a hard disk downloaded, so we're going to specify that. Select the use an existing virtual hard disk file option and click on browse, and browse to the file that we downloaded and extracted, which is the CentOS 7 file with the VDI extension. Click on OK, and that creates the file. Now before powering on the template, we will go into settings and make a few more changes. Go to system and we'll increase the CPU to around 2. And we go to network section and we will set the adapter 1 to bridged network. This way my virtual machine gets an IP address as well as it can connect to the internet to download and install packages as required. I will now go ahead and power on the system. Okay, I'm now at the login prompt. Select the default user, which is OS Boxes. Now the password, to find out the password for any images downloaded from osboxes.org, go to the info section, and then you'll see that the username is osboxes and the password is osboxes.org. So I'm going to use that password, osboxes.org. I'll click on sign in to log into the CentOS system. I'll open up a terminal and type in ifconfig. The ifconfig command tells me the IP address currently assigned to the virtual machine. As you can see, it is 192.168.1.112. Now I will open up a SSH terminal to SSH into that virtual machine. Now in my case, I'm using a terminal software called as MobaXterm. I like to use this. This is a free software that is available. You could use any SSH terminal software. You could simply use PuTTY as well. So create a new SSH session and specify the IP address, which is 192.168.1.112. And the username is osboxes. Click on OK. Now we'll specify the password, which is osboxes.org, and I'm logged in. Once I verify that I'm able to SSH into it, I will now shut it down so that I can create clones of this virtual machine. Hello and welcome to this demo. Okay, the virtual machine is now powered off. I will now right click on it and select clone. And in the new virtual machine page, I'm going to give it a name. So the first clone is going to be the Ansible master. So I'm going to name it as Ansible controller. And make sure that you check the reset MAC address option because I need a new MAC address for all my virtual machines. In the next page, I'm going to make sure I select a linked clone. A linked clone will basically is space saving. It does not consume the entire, it does not clone the entire virtual machine, so it does not consume that much space. I'm now going to click on clone to create a clone of the virtual machine. So I now have the Ansible controller, and I'm going to create another clone for the Ansible target. For the first Ansible target, I will name it as Ansible-target1. I'll make sure I check the initialize MAC address option, and I will select the linked clone. So now I have a template, I have a I have an Ansible controller and an Ansible target. I will now power up the Ansible controller and the Ansible target. Once they're powered on, I will log into it using the OS Boxes password. I will open a terminal and run the ifconfig command to find out the IP address. Now the reason I find out the IP address and establish an SSH connection is that I find it very easy to work with these virtual machines over an SSH session rather than through this terminal window. That way I can easily copy and paste commands. Okay, I will now establish an SSH session to my Ansible master. The IP address is 192.168.1.113. The username is OS Boxes. This time I will name the session as Ansible-controller. Okay, so I'm logged in. I will also establish a session to my target machine, which is at 192.168.1.114, and I will name the session as Ansible-target1. Okay, so I now have a session to the controller and the target. The next step is to rename the host. As you can see, both my controller and target are named as OS boxes. I'd like to name the controller as controller and the target as target. So the first step is to modify the /etc/hostname file. If you look inside the file, it is currently OS boxes, so I'm going to remove that and replace it with the name that I want, which is Ansible controller. I'm now going to save that, and the other place to modify is the etc hosts file. So I'm going to edit the /etc/hosts file, and I'll get rid of whatever is already there and replace it with the name that I want it to have. I will leave the local host part as it is, and I can now restart my system. I will repeat the same steps for the target 1 system. Okay, I will now restart my system. Now we're going to duplicate what we did with target 1. We'll create another clone called target 2. Make sure we reinitialize the MAC address and select linked clone as the option for clone type. And then we will power on the target 2 machine. Once it's powered on, we will log into it, open a terminal, and find the IP address of it. In this case, it is 192.168.1.115. We will now establish an SSH connection to the system from my SSH terminal, and I will name the session as Ansible-target2. I will now edit the host name to target2. We will shut it down and wait for it to come back up. I will now establish connectivity to my systems again. And as you can see, the name is applied. I can now see it as Ansible-controller. So the next step is to install Ansible on the Ansible controller. If you go to the Ansible documentation site and look at the installation guide, you will see instructions for installing Ansible on various operating systems. If you look at the instructions under CentOS, you can see that it's as simple as running the command yum install Ansible. So I'm just going to copy that and execute that on my CentOS system and provide the confirmation to install the packages. Okay, once completed, you can run the Ansible -- version command to confirm that Ansible is installed and to confirm the version of the Ansible installed on this system. So that concludes the Ansible installation part.